I will start with the emergency evacuation announcement. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm activates, please leave the building in an orderly fashion via your nearest fire exit. The fire assembly point is the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by the council staff. Please switch off mobiles or turn them to silent. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed, so please remember to switch your microphone on when speaking. Members of the public, whilst you are of course entitled to film or take photographs during this meeting, this should be done without disruption to the meeting and can be only done from a designated area in the public seating. Please raise your hand clearly in the air if you wish to take photographs or film this evening. No one has done so. Right, we'll move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We have an apology from Councillor Danielle Belton, and I understand Councillor Ward is substituting. Any other? I think everyone else is here. Agenda item 2, non-members attending. None apart from Councillor Ward who's substituting. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meetings held on the 20th of September 23 and the 17th of January 2024. Are the minutes approved? There's a general acceptance there, thank you. Right, agenda item 4, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? There's no one indicating. So we move on to agenda item 5 in the first paper on the agenda. Marcus Houghton, Director of Environment, will introduce this report.
Good evening, members. This report is in response to committee members raising concerns regarding the environmental impact of 3G pitches. As you can find in the report, it alludes that we have an opportunity to consider installing 3G pitches within the district. But I think in the light of the EU ban on the use of certain microplastics, I think the committee members asked that we sort of put this report together. I think officers put together a very comprehensive report, and I'm nothing really further to note but so happy to take any questions. Thank you.
On the recommendation, which is in 5.1. Where is the recommendation? Sorry, can you just direct me to it? It is 5.1. I find it illogical not to agree with it. I mean, it's just common sense. But I just want to query the phrase strive to. And would it be in order to make that we should rather than strive to? Because it seems to me that the mitigation measures for using the microplastics are a bit convoluted, and I'm not actually sure that they would be followed in every case. So does that leave us any alternative but to use the substitute materials?
I think that's obviously just suggested wording. I think it's the members to consider and adjust as they see fit. And I said it's a position statement that would of course go on to the executive to consider. But I suppose as I would suggest as a climate emergency, an ecological emergency sort of committee, then I guess yes, if you're looking for stronger wording to make quite clear the committee's position to the executive, then I said that would seem like a sensible wording to consider. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Milne, I was going to ask if Councillor Sharp wanted to put that forward as an amendment.
Yeah, I would like to put that forward as an amendment. Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Wilson, seconds. Then, sorry, Councillor Milne wanted to come in as well.
At the moment there is the European Union, as we know, is looking at the infill, which is a rubber material made from old tyres. But there's ongoing. I think we should have an amendment to keep a constant review of up and coming research into the actual turf material itself. because there are American papers from universities and an ecological one from Europe that's actually sieved thousands of cubic kilometres of ocean off the coast of Europe and found up to 10-15% blades amongst this, because it doesn't rot and the material the turf's made of keeps collecting. So, and the PFAS has chemicals in it which break down in sunlight, and because people are running and thumping around on this stuff, it doesn't repair itself like grass. And there are concerns about that at the moment. So as that's ongoing, we ought to review this from time to time, because at the moment we'll probably say it's okay to have 2G because it doesn't have the rubber crumb, and Sport England say it's okay, but the jury is still out on all of this. There's a lot of work going on with the universities on it. If you search the internet, you will find the papers. And from that point of view, that's a concern, because of this, there's 100,000 of these pitches in Europe, and if we keep the material be buried in the ground, so we keep going and going and going, saw these every 10 years, you can see eventually we're possibly building up some problem, but we do need to have the science for that, which is its early stages. They're finally, I mean, I think somebody did vacuumed pitches in America and found something like 200 kilograms a year coming out of them of particulate material, which blows around and eventually gets into the water courses, goes into rivers, and because you end up with these little bits that are floating around in the ocean, which scientists have finally started to evaluate, which there's a paper on Elsevier about it, which is quite a piece of work, it's in Europe. So I think we could say 3G, we'll go with science on that from Europe, but 2G, but we need to keep an eye on it. It's something we ought to review.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor.
I'd like to recommend that we say that, so it's okay at the moment, because that's what we're being told is okay.
I'm not sure how we fit that into the recommendation at the moment. Can we come back to that in a minute? Because we're still on the first recommendation. We are, it's a bit difficult this, I'll probably take advice. How do we, if there are other amendments to the draft position statement coming forward, how do we deal with those? Should we take them each separately as they come? Yeah, I've got a nod there, so we'll do that. Sorry, Marcus.
So I think this was Councillor Milne's. I think they're captured within the position statement, because it talks about seeking that there are alternatives out there. I think, again, if you look into the report at 4.4, we mentioned about Manchester City Council, who have been in communication with, have used cork infill, and we report actually quite successful. And so I think if we're taking a precautionary principle on this matter, then you'd seek not to use the microplastic infill. If we have to delay whilst we are looking for alternatives, but we're going to come up with an alternative that we're actually that we are satisfied with, meets our criteria, our sustainable criteria, then I guess we can then proceed. But I think it's captured in there. But it's a sort of area study that's pretty in infancy. It's still coming to light, isn't it? But I think that's why the EU have stepped up and said, actually, look, I think we need to ban this, and you know, as a precaution more than anything else.
Well, I'll be satisfied with that at the moment. Okay.
So with regard to the amendment to the position statement, if we deal with that first, which has already been put forward by Councillor Sharp and seconded by Councillor Wilson, that would change the wording of, is that any 3G pitches planned for the district should use sustainable organic materials. Is that correct? So we're removing the words strive to.
Yeah.
Is that everyone clear on that?
Yeah.
So anyone has any comment on that? Any questions, or shall we go to the vote? Looks like we're going to the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I actually think the strive, it does put a lot of pressure, doesn't it? If we say should and use legally, that does put a hell of a lot of pressure on, you know, whoever is going to create these to actually do it. I think strive, I know what he's saying in regards to, it's a bit more forceful to say should, It's not as forceful as must, but strive, I felt probably struck a right balance, in my opinion. As I say, that's my opinion. I would prefer to continue with the word strive, but I can understand that the word should as well as an intent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Milne.
Well, there is the 2G option, which has a different sort of infill. It isn't sort of so environmentally unfriendly. There is that, and that may well, subject to research in the future, for the time being, sort of satisfy that kind of requirement.
Yeah, I think we may be coming to that after this vote. Thank you. So, thank you. No other.
Stuart first, and then you've got Arthur.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know that. So, Councillor Wilson, was yours on this amendment or on something else? Because we're speaking to this amendment.
Thanks,
at the
Chair.
moment.
It was a further addition. So in addition to councillor Sharp's,
Yeah, can we take that after
yeah,
this vote then? Because I think we just need to be clear on what we're voting on. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I prefer the word strive. Should sounds a bit ambiguous to me, so I'd much rather use the word strive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the vote then. Those in favour of the amendment, which will change the wording to the district should use sustainable organic materials. Those in favour of that amendment. Those against? Thank you. And those abstaining? Right, thank you. That's carried as an amendment. I'll now move on to Councillor Wilson.
thanks, Chair. So I propose a further amendment to the amended recommendation, which is to add at the end of paragraph 5.1 the words, and that all alternatives be evaluated before considering their use. So in other words, we don't just reach for 3G pictures, but that we have actually demonstrated that we've considered alternatives. Do you want me to read the wording again? Yeah. So at the end of after it says place, and that all alternatives be evaluated before considering their use.
Thank you. And that's seconded by Councillor McPherson. So we go to anybody who wants to speak to the amendment. No one does. I think it probably goes some way to meet Councillor Milne's concerns as well. So is everyone happy to go to the vote on that now? Okay, those in favour of the amendment? Those against the amendment? Any abstentions? Thank you. So that amendment is carried. Anybody else want to speak on this item? Thank you. Can I just raise one question? Because I think it also goes back to what Councillor Milne was talking about. We refer to 3G artificial pictures, but obviously there's concerns as well over those which might not be regarded as 3G pictures. Like there's been some planning applications recently, and there's what you might call 2G or I'm not sure what the word is to describe them, but they're not up to the full standard of what we regard as 3G pictures. Are we using 3G artificial pictures as a generic term for all artificial plastic pictures or not? Sorry, Councillor Ward.
I would say you can't. I would say 3G is either 3G and it can't be anything else. And I would say, you know, to be unambiguous is something we should not do.
I agree, that's why I've raised it. And I think if we're not talking about those which might not be regarded as 3G, because most people regard 3G as a type of pitch, there's also 4G pitches, I think, aren't there? And there'll probably be 5G. Or is everything now 3G? So 3G covers everything as far as we're concerned.
I mean, if you're concerned, you could change it to artificial pitches. You know, if you're concerned, I mean, I think we'd understand what that means. You know, and if you took it in the context of the report as well, obviously referring to artificial infills of SBR plastics, microplastics, I think you'd draw that conclusion. But I think if you wanted that as a standalone, then perhaps removing 3G and just saying artificial pitches.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Ward on that. Councillor Ward.
So Chairman, in effect then, you need to take out European Union. Because because it's the 3G pitches that the European Union has banned. And so if you decide that you're going to say all artificial pitches, then I'm afraid you've got to take the European Union out.
So I think for clarity, we'd say given the European ban on 3G artificial pitches would remain. I think that's the context to one of the position statements, and we'd carry on to say on using traditional infill microplastics and the declaration of climate ecological emergency by this council, the council positions that any artificial pitches planned for the district should strive to or should use sustainable organic materials, and at the end of the life recycling of turf approved activities takes place, with the other amendment added as well, which I do not have in front of me. My apologies, which is the one that Councillor Wilson put forward.
Yeah, that sounds good. Any other questions on that? So I'm not sure where we are now. We still got. So is that anyone putting that amendment forward, or should I put that forward from the chair? I'll put it forward from the chair and seconded by Councillor Judy Gooding. So I will try and read out the whole of it now because I haven't got part of it. So the draft position statement will read. Sorry. Given the European Union ban on 3G artificial pitches on using traditional infill microplastics and the declaration of a climate and ecological emergency by this council, the council position is that any artificial pitches planned for the district should use sustainable organic materials, and that end-of-life recycling of turf at approved facilities takes place. And then
that all alternatively evaluated.
And then the final sentence will read, and that all alternatives to be evaluated before considering their use. Is everyone happy with that? And I've got that correct. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll go to the vote then. All those in favour? That was unanimous. Thank you. I think that's the end of that item. So we now move on to item 6. Parks for Nature Climate Impact Report. Again, Marcus Hotton, Director of Environment, will introduce this report.
Actually, I think Adam Aldridge was going to introduce this, but I'll gladly take questions after Adam's.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Yeah, the report sets out the background information on continuing our Parks for Nature programme and the carbon offsetting that achieves. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, I know that my local one has been well received. There was a lot of consultation at Broxford. Initially, there was a wee bit of unhappiness, but so pleased that our ranger went over there, our warden, and had a long conversation and have adapted Broxford to, well, tailored it to the residents' desires. And I'm hoping that all the others were done the same, because I think this is excellent. what is going forward, and I would certainly support this the whole way.
Thank you. Councillor Julie Gooding and then Councillor Sharp.
I wish I could agree with you, Councillor Ward, because as the ward councillor for Hawkwell West, Clements Hall hasn't yet been added into the list. Therefore, I would ask for member support to add this to the list, and with the view of officers revisiting with its area of meadow and woodlands to be determined at a later date.
Yeah, sorry, were you seconding that, Councillor? So that's seconded by Councillor McPherson. Any comments from Councillor Ward?
Yeah, if the members could please educate me on what is the current use of the Clements Hall green space.
Thank you. Currently, the green space is used just as a recreational area as an extension to the leisure centre.
If I may
Councillor
come
Ward,
back,
do you want to come back?
I assume that's the reason it's not on this particular list then, because it has other uses for the community, which is recreation, sport and such like.
Okay, it's Councillor Ward. So informal recreation, so it's not formal, so there's no football or cricket or anything of those likes. It is a field for picnicking, maybe a kick around, but it's a large field. I think there's potential there, but it just needs to be revisited.
Okay, I just wanted to understand the logic behind the questions from the councillors.
So Councillor Gooding to come back.
I'd just like to add that there currently is funding available to renew the skate park, which hasn't yet been approved, but with the funding there, we could offset some of the work that we do with rewilding, etc., and make a difference in that open space. So there's lots of potential because of the funding that's available for the skate park.
Okay, Councillor Sharp, was that on this subject, on this amendment? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Milne, you indicate?
Yeah, I mean, I went over to Grovewood when we looked at having a flower meadow there, really, where we're not chopping the grass too much. I think that would work at Clements Hall. It looked rather, and especially if you seed it with wildflowers, it looked rather quite magical at certain times of the year, and would go towards this targets I support, Councillor Gooding, in that area. And I don't think it's an expensive thing to do either, which is the other side of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Would it be appropriate to ask officers' opinion on this, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you ask that question again?
Well, I was just wondering your opinion on this proposal, and if the site is worthy of that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. We're more than happy to revisit the site, and I'll ask our teams to make the arrangements and meetings and bring something back for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The skate park, will that be still available? Will that still go into Clements Hall, or is the skate park going to be disposed of instead?
Sorry, it's outside of this report, but my understanding is that the skate park is still being consulted on, so it won't prevent the skate park going in, is my understanding.
If I may just come back, just to clarify your statement. Both would live happily together.
Yeah, maybe Adam Aldridge would comment.
I'm sorry, happily skate parks and meadows being happy together seems to just tickle me a little. I mean, certainly they can complement each other. Yeah, there's enough room there to complement each other. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a splendid initiative. I have absolutely no difficulty in fully supporting the recommendation. Just wonder whether we shouldn't be putting something about timing, like as soon as possible or by the end of the year. Is that practical?
Yeah, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, we can plan, the majority of this has been match funded. So as and when the funding's available, we strive to get the planting done within that same year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a question for the officers through you, if I may. I think it's a really good initiative and I fully support it. And I think that the environmental benefits are great, but I'm not sure we're communicating that very well with the residents. So I think it's a suggestion really, is how we're going to communicate this to them.
Yeah, of course, thank you. So one thing we do intend to do, we have our volunteer policy up and running now with expressions of interest. So our next phase of planting, we intend to publicise that and welcome volunteers to come and join us for that. But I take your point, and we will look to do some more press and comms around the initiative.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to support what Councillor Wilson was just saying, because our part down in Wakeling was one of the first ones. We had teething troubles, and the officers listened to them. They listened to the concerns of the residents. Pathways were cut in. It's been now embedded into the community, which is lovely. But we do need to let them know, you know, the benefits of this, because we've got some facts and figures here. So to get those out would be great, and it can path the way for the future parks that are going to be natured. What's the word? Rewilded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I agree with that as well. I know in Holbridge, which is why Councillor Wilson brought this up, we had residents very concerned about the grass being left to grow long and being attacked by snakes and other animals hiding in it, which I think actually there was a couple of reports, but I'm not sure how serious they were. But yeah, any other questions or comments on item 6? So I'll just get the recommendation. So I'm suggesting then if I read recommendation 1, we'll be adding Clements Hall to this recommendation because it actually lists all the sites. I'll read this out as it stands. So the members are asked to recommend to the executive, recommendation 1, to continue the rollout of the Parks for Nature scheme to complete the listed sites: Bedford Close Rayleigh, Brockford Green Rayleigh, Canewdon Village Green, Holbridge Recreation Ground, Malvern Road Rayleigh, Millview Meadows Rochford, Rawworth Recreation Ground, Rochford Reservoir, Rayleigh Leisure Centre, Swain Park, and Clements Hall Recreation Ground, is it? What's the term? Recreation Ground? Sorry, Marcus.
Well, that's perfectly fine, yes. Yeah. Sorry, yes, that's fine. Clements Hall Recreation Ground, we recognise.
Clements Hall Recreation Ground. Is that Councillor Williams?
Chairman, did you say Rochford Leisure Centre? No. Right.
For clarity, I'll just read them all out again that are on the list, and Councillor Gooding will double check them against the list on page 6.18, so we're very clear what we're agreeing. I think it's 6.18. Sorry, one moment. I'll pass my list to Councillor Gooding. Right, so the listed sites: Bedford Close Rayleigh, Brockford Green Rayleigh, Canewdon Village Green, Holbridge Recreation Ground, Malvern Road Rayleigh, Millview Meadows Rochford, Rawworth Recreation Ground, Rochford Reservoir, Rayleigh Leisure Centre, Swain Park, and Clements Hall. Is that?
Open space.
Yeah, 1 minute, I'm just going to confer with the officer. So thank you. That is the list I just read out. Councillor Ward.
Yes, thank you. I mean, on the list where we've got 6.3, we've got obviously from 6.2, 6.3, we've got the implemented sites. And then on 6.3 going down, we've got those waiting for implementation. There are 2 sites on there which come up as question marks, basically Lower Lambricks, which is now not viable, which has been taken out. But the other one, again, is on hold, which is Rayleigh Leisure Open Space. So as long as that's noted that that's in there, because we did mention Rayleigh Leisure, and that is on hold at the moment.
So, Marcus Hotton, I think.
Thank you, sir. I think Rayleigh Leisure Centre, there has been a rollout of the parks for nature. I think that's what we refer to in Rayleigh Open Space. Is that the one you're referring to, Councillor Ward? Sorry.
I'm just reading your report and I'm commenting on the report, so I just wanted clarification.
So yeah, so part of Rayleigh Leisure Centre was rolled out with the long grass, the rewilding of the grass meadows, but the rest of the project is on the hold. So it would stop any tree planted at the moment, if that makes sense. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I've got some advice which we will take the amendment separately, but Councillor McPherson first.
Sorry, Chairman. Just for clarity, Southend Road Memorial Gardens, my understanding is a community group of looking to take that on, and it will be more of a formal garden than a rewilding, if officers can confirm.
So obviously the report writes to the as-is situation rather than, so of course things can occur in the future, but that would be part of a separate report, future report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've been advised we need to take the adding of Clements Hall as an amendment to the list in R1. So that's been proposed by Councillor Gooding and seconded by Councillor McPherson. So any further questions on this amendment, adding Clements Hall? No, so we go straight to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. So do you want me to read this out for the 4th time? I will, just for, or are we happy to take it that I've read it out enough times? Okay, so we now go to vote on recommendation 1, which I've read out earlier, with now the added amendment. So all those in favour of recommendation 1? Thank you. Again, that's unanimous. Agenda item 7, financial appraisal of Rochford District Council's 2030 net zero carbon target. Again, Marcus Hotton, Director of Environment, will introduce the report.
Thank you. A great deal of work has gone into this report. I think we've got our Climate and Sustainability Manager, Henry Muss, here to probably introduce and take questions on a bit more of the detail. So I'll hand over to him. Thank you.
Just to introduce the recommendations, yeah. So the report is essentially looking as to whether our net zero 2030 target for carbon emissions associated directly with the council is feasible, and to try and give a timeline of different interventions and costs which will be involved, and what funding is available and what we could bid for grants. So essentially, that's all mapped out, and the 3 recommendations to consider to achieve the 93% reduction against that target, which is quite impressive because we've still got 6 years. So it's quite comforting that we are well on target to hit the target, is to explore a green tariff, which essentially is carbon-free electricity for our corporate sites, which we're not doing yet, because that's really a quick win and may not even be a cost implication, just a switch of tariff. To look into the hydro-treated vegetable oil, which is the green or renewable diesel, which is a significant proportion of the carbon footprint for Rochford. Another quick win, really, in terms of investment, and that's been captured in terms of lifetime costs to save a tonne of CO2. And then there's the ask to consider the allocation of £750,000 for the other measures, pending results of grants, funding, etc. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Ward?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There's a couple of things just want to understand in regards to, especially recommendation 2. That's quite a large additional cost, which is going to come out over a period of the recommendation for the time of the use of the waste vehicles to £600,000, which is quite a large commitment. Now, I know from a political point of view, there may be looking at the reduction down to net zero or carbon zero in 2030, but the government have moved the goalpost now to 2035. Now, I wonder, I'm just looking at this extra money of taxpayers' money, and new vehicles are coming in. I've had a look at a lot of the stuff that's going on in California, and I've looked at spoken to Toyota as well, because I was involved in them many years back, and they're bringing on the hydrogen engines. They've already got one on the market now. Trucks are now available in US for transportation. It works out a lot cheaper. Now, I'm just wondering, are we spending a lot of money? Now, it may just be a political decision, something that people want to do to actually reduce this down, and it may be that's the way they want to go, okay. But I'm just want to challenge that amount of money, and maybe there is a moment in time that we need to think very clearly that if we're going to change over the vehicles are going to be changed over, that I would rather see that money saved for other uses. That particular amount of money saved for other uses. The other things to discuss in R3 with regard to solar and other mitigating items I'm happy with. It's just that one item I want to challenge because of the change of vehicles. We can see in the report that there is not a consideration for electric. That's been discounted within the report, and I totally agree with that. But I think the consideration of moving to hydrogen vehicles is very viable. And I'm just wondering if, that amount of talent, I'm looking at where we live. We live in an environment which is rural. We have lots of trees which will absorb a lot of the CO2. We're not living in the midst of London where, unfortunately, there's not enough trees there to absorb that. So I'm just looking at that particular item to challenge the viability of that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. So for clarity, the HVO fuel is a direct diesel replacement. So it is something that can almost be on tap or off tap, can put onto tap, if that makes sense. So you can, if you wish to go back to normal diesel, we could go back to normal diesel with the same vehicle. So it's a revenue commitment rather than a capital, but it's also a route to net zero that we can take at any time on that period of years. So I recognise in the future there may be better technologies, but I think what we've mapped out at the moment is a way to achieve 93% reduction in our carbon emissions over that period. It's a route. I think it's setting out the principles of how that could be achieved. I think you're right to ask those questions. Around sort of hydrogen-powered vehicles, I think again, we follow that with interest too. I think at this stage, the central government is still fairly lukewarm on supporting too many initiatives, and it's still in its infancy. So I think what we're suggesting at this stage is that it's something that can be considered. So if you wish to achieve net zero quickly as a council, therefore it's a option to consider, but it doesn't rule out future options. So, you know, if you wish to go back, so you could even mix half and half diesel, half HVO. It's a straightforward replacement. So our existing vehicles can almost, you know, run off that straight away. So yes, of course, you run it for the full period of that time. It is that cost. But equally, if you wish to start on year 5 or year 6 on that, you could go across at that stage. So it's not a commitment that you cannot reverse, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't say you're locked in at all.
Yeah, Councillor McPherson, did you indicate earlier, or were you thought you did?
It is actually, yeah.
Councillor Sharp.
Well, my understanding that the additional £84,000 is the difference between the current cost of diesel and hydro-treated vegetable oil. And if one sort of projects forward, there's every chance that the cost of diesel will go up and the cost of hydro-treated vegetable oil will go down going forward. So I think that it's necessarily going to be £84,000. It could be a lesser figure going forward. And my bet that it would be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. My questions relate and observations relate to recommendation 3, to consider the allocation of the 751,000 of capital funding to deliver the energy saving improvements to the council's assets as set out in the report. One thing that I think that everybody should note, this report doesn't include all the assets. It quite clearly takes the Freight House and South Street out of this. Now, I will give you a scenario. If we're looking to reduce our carbon footprint, we could probably actually demonstrate that as a council by selling those assets overnight. But that's not going to actually reduce their carbon footprint. We will just pass that on to somebody else to deal with. So I do think if we're doing a review of our assets, we should do a review of all of our assets. That's one point.
Would you like me to answer that one now?
Yep.
Because there's quite a clear answer to that one at the moment, unfortunately, which is the Freight House, the Civic Suite and South Street aren't mentioned because there is no determination made to what is happening. There's still the original agreement, which is still in place, and there is an asset delivery programme that's yet to be decided, unfortunately. It's taken longer than we would have wanted, but obviously as a new administration, it's taken us time to understand what's going on. So just because they're not here because we have made no decision on them at this point.
Thank you, Chairman. I take that on board. However, we have got the mill included in here as well. And until there's a meaningful market research returned, I don't know, unless you know otherwise, that the future is confirmed for that building as well. So it could sit the same as our other assets. If anybody wants to answer that one.
Happy to answer that unless an officer wants to, but as far as I know, the mill hall is open and running, and we are currently looking to what operating model we'll be taking forward with the mill hall. But whatever operating model we take forward, will have the advantage of this work being done to it to make it cheaper to run. I think in a recent meeting it was stated that the net operating cost of the mill hall is £340,000. So if we bring that down, which this would do, so it's not just a carbon saving we're making here, it's a cost saving as well. The cost saving will make it more attractive as any operating model, whether it's internal or external to an operator.
Thank you, Chairman. But just to say again, our leisure centres, they probably would be green. We're not going to be moving them in any other direction from where they are. The mill hall is still under observation on how it will work and fund going forward. The Freight House, unfortunately, is very similar to the mill hall community centre that's been lost for that community. It should be included in here. And I will stick to my guns on that one and have to abstain from recommendation 3. And then just looking at page 7.8, 6.2, it does say the request for the additional 751,000 capital is not part of the council's existing capital programme and would have to be considered within the upcoming budget setting cycle for the next municipal year. And that also concerns me, because where are we going to get that funding from? Our taxpayer or realignment? Thank you.
So the report, I mean, so it's I wouldn't say a desktop exercise, but clearly we have to set out a route to prove that it can be achieved. Where the funding is found is a different matter, and we're saying it's recommended to the executive to consider. And I think as officers, I think in speaking to the chair as well, that we recognise the funding is necessarily there, but it establishes the principles. And I think that's the key thing. So if we're saying actually we recognise this is a route or route to near carbon net zero, that as an authority we're content to follow, and as a principle we're content to follow this, then I think it's then for officers perhaps then to go away and say, you know, how can we find this funding? And that's the next stage. But what I at least want to know as an initial thing is, yes, we believe this is the right way to achieve that. So of course, 750,000 cannot be taken lightly. But then, you know, the next stage after this will be to, of course, for officers to seek funding. But I would also argue that some of this is actually there's a compelling case for invest to save. But, would that be so? I would probably go away. I wouldn't want to preempt the executive, but they may well say there is no money at this stage. But even with invest to save, it could be we could borrow or we could find grants. But there are other ways of recognising that sort of target.
Thank you. May I come back?
Thank you. Could I just add one more thing? Sorry, Councillor McPherson. Another thing, we're not sitting here doing nothing, and obviously our Henry Musk particularly is out there looking for grants, and I'm aware that we have applied for a grant in relation to Clements Hall, which we were hoping to have some news on in about 4 to 6 weeks, possibly. I've mentioned that many times before. We're waiting for the result for that bid. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I was literally going to come back to say the officers reassured me financially, especially around the invest to save principles. My only concern is that not all, this is a great start, but I'd love to see all assets included in there, even if it was in a staged process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure you'll be questioning me closely tomorrow night on it as well, along with Tim Willis. Thank you, Councillor Milne.
Yeah, given the pressure on the mid-term financial strategy, looking at recommendation 2, which as Marcus says, we can implement down the line if we wish, and the fact that all of our assets are not listed, wouldn't it be more prudent to, as we resolve the issues to do with our assets, that we do include everything that is in that area and look at this 84,000 a year, because we can use that money in the shorter term to get the pressure off of actually developing and making these assets really environmentally friendly and well insulated and so on, with the right kind of heating and all the rest of it. And it gives, there may be some building work to be done and so on. So And then at a later stage, we could switch to an alternative to mineral diesel. Because let's face it, I know it's cleaner, but it still creates CO2. So we haven't got the clean vehicles yet, as Councillor Ward has said. So from that point of view, if we did it that way, wouldn't we? I know we're not hitting our target then because we're moving off that graph, but you know, to look at recommendation 2 and actually hold back on that to get finance really for these other things that need doing. That's my question.
So again, it's for you as a committee to decide. But I think as a climate and ecological emergency committee, where I think you know you've declared a climate emergency, you said there is this imperative to achieve this as quickly as possible. Then my view is that the spirit of the committee would be such that I'm suggesting this is the quickest and most cost-effective way to achieve that. And it's therefore then, when this is presented to the executive, it's for the executive to consider other wider matters and pressures. But I think, you know, within this, so we're almost thinking outside of this committee. This committee is about how can we achieve this target, and we set out a route. I fully agree with what you suggest. Absolutely, if you get the capital investment first, achieve the savings, and the savings can then fund the fuel, is probably a solution that seems very neat. But I think from an officer perspective, certainly from a sort of sustainability factor, if we hadn't said to you there is a quick way of achieving this, there comes at a cost, you might say, well, why didn't you tell us that? So we've set it out in this way. Absolutely, that it may be when it gets to executive, they want to take a different view, or you could take a different view this evening. But but I think from our point, from my perspective, we've set out the quickest way we think we can achieve this, the most cost-effective way. The funding is a challenge, but perhaps that's more for the executive to consider than the committee tonight. But that's entirely up to you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry, could I just
see that?
come back as well and just say that the whole point of HVO is it does reduce CO2. I think, was it by 93% overall of our use? Sorry, Councillor, you want to come back anyway?
No, it's all right. It's all right. I know a bit about combustion. Sorry.
Anybody else got any comments, concerns? No. So, sorry, Councillor Macpherson, you wanted to, I'm happy to take the recommendations separately so people can vote on them separately, because I think there's a bit of concern on some of them from some people. So I'll read them from the chair and we'll take them in turn. I will propose each one and then I'll just need a seconder for each one. Okay, thank you. So I'll start with recommendation 1. Recommendation 1, to explore a green zero carbon electricity tariff for the council corporate supplies. Councillor Sharp seconds it. So we go to the vote. Those in favour? Sorry, those against? None against, and those abstentions. Thank you, 1 abstention. Thank you. So recommendation 1 is carried. Recommendation 2, to consider the allocation of an additional £84,000 revenue budget for the purchase of the procurement of green diesel, hydro-treated vegetable oil for the council fleet currently using mineral diesel. Right. Those in favour? Those against? None against. Those abstaining? 1 abstention. Thank you. That also was carried. Recommendation 3, to consider the allocation of £750,973 of capital funding to deliver energy saving improvements to council assets as set out in the report. I'm again moving that, and that's seconded by Councillor Wilson. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions?
4.
Okay. Thank you, that's carried. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 8, Sustainability Progress Report. Again, this report will be presented by Marcus Hodden, Director of Environment.
Thank you. So this is a brief report, really just summarising the progress made this year against the sustainability strategy and the targets that were agreed by the committee earlier this year. So the idea is that this will go back into council, be a regular report, and so we've kept it fairly brief and punchy, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? No, I can't see anyone indicating. Thank you for the report. I think, again, it's useful to have this to make sure we're on target and making sure we're not forgetting anything from the sustainability report that is excellent. So if there's no questions, I'll go straight to the vote. I'll read out the recommendation. There is only one recommendation, recommendation 1, to approve the contents of the report for presentation to the next available council meeting. Councillor Milne is moving that. Yes. I think Councillor Gooding is seconding that. All those in favour? Thank you, that was unanimous. That concludes the business for this evening's meeting. It has closed at 8:27 p.m. Thank you very much.